The Great Bamboo Rebellion. The American dream had always been a quiet patch of land, a place to call my own. A backyard where I could grill steaks on a summer afternoon, maybe sip a cold beer while my dog lazed in the grass. When I closed on my modest ranch-style home in the Meadowview Estate subdivision, I thought I'd made it. The sun was golden, the deck was mine to stain, in one of 3 HOA-approved shades of beige, and life felt perfect. For about 15 minutes. That first Saturday, I stood over my Weber grill, the sizzle of ribeyes filling the air with a scent that could make angels weep. My golden retriever, Max, sprawled contentedly nearby, his tail thumping lazily against the lawn. The world was right until a voice sliced through the calm like a knife. "Is that charcoal?" it demanded, sharp and accusatory. I turned to see my neighbor, Evelyn Harper, standing on her pristine patio, hands on hips, her silver hair sculpted into a helmet that could survive a windstorm. In her arms trembled a tiny dog, possibly a dog, more like a nervous cotton ball, named Lord Percival Puddlesworth. Yeah, I said, mustering a smile. "Just a classic barbecue." Evelyn's lips pursed tighter than a lemon. "I'm referring to the fuel source, James. The particle drift could harm my prize-winning roses." Particle drift? I blinked, tongs frozen midair. This wasn't a barbecue, it was a chemistry lecture. I mumbled something about the wind blowing the other way, but Evelyn wasn't done. "And your dog's digging is disrupting the soil's integrity. It invites pests." Max, currently wrestling a half-chewed tennis ball, looked as threatening as a marshmallow. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just living next to a nosy neighbor. Evelyn was an invasive species, and my dream of suburban peace was under siege. The problem was the layout of our lots. No fence, no shrubs, just an open expanse between my deck and Evelyn's patio, giving her a front-row seat to my every move. I couldn't sip coffee without feeling her judgmental stare. I needed a barrier, a fortress to reclaim my privacy. That night, fueled by a steak that tasted faintly of defeat, I searched online, how to build a privacy fence. A 6-foot cedar fence seemed perfect, simple, tasteful, and tall enough to block Evelyn's hawk-like gaze. But I'd underestimated the true power in Meadowview. The Homeowners Association, a bureaucracy so rigid it could make a DMV clerk weep. Their rulebook, a binder thick enough to double as a doorstop, declared no fence could exceed 4 feet. 4 feet. A hurdle, not a barrier. Max could leap it without breaking a sweat, and Evelyn, at 5'2", could peer over it like a vulture. I filled out their Form 7B, in Times New Roman, size 12, complete with diagrams and cedar samples, and mailed it with naive hope. A week later, a cream-colored letter arrived, dripping with formality. Request denied. See Article 4, Section 3C. No explanation, just a cold rejection. I appealed at the next HOA meeting, held in the garage of the president, a retired accountant named Harold Grayson. Harold wore his authority like his pressed khakis, stiff and humorless. Evelyn sat front row, smirking. I pleaded for logic. Why is a 6-foot fence a problem, but a 4-foot one isn't? Harold leaned back, his voice oozing condescension. "It's not about logic, James. It's about the bylaws. Tall fences create a fortress-like atmosphere. They're unfriendly." Evelyn nodded so hard I thought her hair might take flight. I left the meeting defeated, her smug wave burning into my memory. This wasn't about privacy anymore. It was war. The next few days were grim. I stared at my exposed backyard, Evelyn's patio a constant reminder of my lost freedom. I brainstormed absurd solutions. A 4-foot fence topped with thorny planters, a circus tent of patio umbrellas, even training pigeons to swarm her patio. None were practical. Then, one sleepless night, fueled by whiskey and rage, I stumbled onto a subreddit called Malicious Compliance. Story after story of people sticking it to petty tyrants by following rules to the letter. One post stopped me cold. A Florida homeowner, barred from tall fences, planted a 15-foot wall of palms. His HOA's bylaws, like mine, only restricted man-made structures, not plants. I dove into Meadowview's bylaws. No height limits on trees, shrubs, or hedges. Nothing. They obsessed over fences and sheds, but ignored nature. My search for fastest-growing privacy plants led me to bamboo, specifically Golden Goddess, a clumping, non-invasive variety that could hit 20 feet in months. It wasn't a shrub or a tree, it was grass. I grinned, imagining Harold trying to argue my grass was too tall. At 3 a.m., I ordered 52-gallon bamboo rhizomes, enough for a double-row, 50-foot wall. This wasn't just a hedge. It was horticultural warfare. I wasn't a gardener. My plant experience was limited to neglecting a cactuso. I hired Frank's Landscaping. Frank, a grizzled man with a voice like gravel and a truck that looked like it survived an apocalypse, understood my plight instantly. HOA trouble? He asked, eyeing Evelyn measuring her birdbath with a tape measure. I spilled the saga. The charcoal, Max's digging, the 4-foot fence rule. Frank chuckled. A 20-foot wall of grass. That's poetry, kid. He planned it like a military operation. A double-row planting, a deep trench with a root barrier to keep the bamboo contained, and enough compost to fuel a jungle. 2 days later, his crew arrived with a dump truck of soil and 50 bamboo plants. Evelyn was on her patio in seconds, phone out, snapping photos like a paparazzo. Neighbors slowed their walks, gawking at the commotion. I waved casually, as if planting a forest was routine. By day 2, the bamboo was in, a neat row of 4-foot shoots in a mulched bed, fed by a hidden irrigation system. Frank handed me the invoice, chunk of my savings, and said, "Just add water and wait for the screaming." The screaming came fast. An HOA email from Harold arrived before the mulch settled. Unauthorized landscaping modification. Submit Form 11C. Evelyn had struck. I replied, citing Article 8, which governed lawn maintenance, not plants. My grass complies with the duty to maintain a verdant green space. I wrote, knowing the term Poaceae family grass would drive them nuts. The bamboo grew like it was auditioning for a sci-fi movie. In a week, it thickened. In a month, it hit 6 feet. By summer's end, it was a 12-foot emerald curtain, rustling softly, drowning out Evelyn's voice. She escalated her complaints. The bamboo cast shadows on her patio, distressing Lord Percival. It blocked her sunset view. I countered each HOA notice with bylaws, surveys, and sarcasm. Please cite the article guaranteeing sunlight for dogs, I wrote. My Evelyn Files binder grew thick. Then she called the police, claiming my hostile structure was a public nuisance. 2 officers arrived, one a rookie, the other a weary veteran named Officer Daniels. They stared at the bamboo, bemused. "It's just plants," the rookie said. Daniels sighed. "Unless he's launching bamboo spears at her dog, it's a civil matter." He told Evelyn to stop calling 911. As they left, Daniels muttered, "I kind of like it. My brother-in-law's on an HOA board. Can't stand him." The police victory only fueled the HOA's wrath. They called an emergency meeting to discuss horticultural harmony. Evelyn presented a slideshow, circling my bamboo in red like a crime scene. She claimed it was a fire hazard, a vermin haven, a threat to her foundation. I dismantled her points with the bylaws. Bamboo was fire-resistant. I'd installed a root barrier, and vermin? Her bird feeder was the real culprit. The crowd murmured. A neighbor stood, complaining about his fine basketball hoop. Another mentioned her granddaughter's band treehouse. The meeting turned into a rebellion against the HOA's tyranny. Harold's gavel was powerless. But the war wasn't over. The HOA shifted tactics, nitpicking my trash cans, left out 17 minutes past 8 p.m., and lawn height, 4.25 inches near the mailbox. It was death by 1,000 cuts. I was drowning in paperwork, my joy fading until my neighbor Ruth, a retired paralegal, stepped in. She'd quit the HOA board decades ago over their obsession with brass house numbers. "They're harassing you," she said, poring over my binder. "And they're sloppy." Ruth taught me to fight fire with fire, drafting appeals that buried the HOA in their own bureaucracy. Then we struck gold. Harold's 2-story deck, built a decade ago, violated county setback rules and lacked a final inspection. At the next HOA meeting, I laid out the evidence. The room fell silent. Harold's face turned crimson. The lawsuit against my bamboo was dropped the next day. All fines were rescinded. Harold resigned, and a new, reasonable board took over. A year later, my backyard is a sanctuary. The bamboo towers at 20 feet, a lush, rustling wall. Max snoozes at my feet, the grill sizzles, and the world is quiet. Evelyn's complaints are now faint background noise, muffled by leaves. The bamboo's fame spread its an Instagram backdrop, featured in a blog as the Great Wall of Suburbia. It's changed my yard's ecosystem, drawing birds that fill the air with song. Best of all, it united my neighbors. We share beers and stories, bonded by our defiance of petty tyranny. The HOA's rules still exist, but their power is broken. I raise my beer to the bamboo, a monument to freedom. Good fences make good neighbors. A 20-foot wall of spiked grass makes them silent. What do you think? Was I justified in my bamboo rebellion, or did I go too far? Have you faced petty injustices or fought back against overreaching rules? Share your stories and opinions in the comments below. Let's talk about standing up to unfairness and finding creative ways to reclaim your space.